Welcome to the debate.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Today, we're dissecting a life that, feels less like a standard biography and more like a tripartite mythology. We are turning our attention to Imran Khan. And depending on who you ask, and crucially, when you ask them, he is either this messianic savior of Pakistan or a cautionary tale of hubris. When you look at the material we have in front of us, we're not just looking at one career. We are reconciling three distinct, massive existences packed into one timeline. You've got the world-conquering cricketing legend, the saintly philanthropist, and the beleaguered politician.
It's a fascinating case study. Usually public figures excel in one lane, and they stay there. Khan tried to dominate three. And the central tension, I think the thing we really need to get at today, is whether those three lives are a continuum, a single rising arc of leadership, or if they're fundamentally incompatible. Does the skill set that wins a Cricket World Cup actually, prevent you from successfully running a parliamentary democracy? That's really the question the material forces us to ask.
And that is the cynical view. And naturally, I'm here to challenge it. My position is that the source material reveals a consistent narrative. It's one of resilience and visionary leadership. Whether it was leading a team of underdogs in 1992, building a cancer hospital for the poor, or fighting for 22 years to become prime minister, the thread is the same. Here's a man who sets an impossible goal and just wills it into existence. I would argue that his political stumbling blocks weren't failures of competence, but the inevitable friction of trying to reform a deeply entrenched system.
And I take the opposing view. I believe the record shows that while Khan was, without a doubt, a genius on the pitch and a hero in philanthropy, he was simply outmatched by the machinery of the state. The very traits that made him a great captain, that single-mindedness, the autocracy, and uncompromising nature, they became his undoing in politics. His tenure didn't end in a trophy lift. It ended in a vote of no confidence, economic instability, and, now, legal convictions. So I argue his legacy is a game of two halves, a pristine first half and a frankly disastrous second.
Okay, let's start by grounding this in the man's origins because the context really explains the psychology. The material notes he was born in 1952 in Lahore to a respected Pashtun family. That Pashtun heritage is vital. It implies a cultural code of honor, of resilience, and maybe a certain rigidity. But he isn't just a product of Lahore or the cricket pitch. He went to the University of Oxford. He studied philosophy, politics, and economics.
PPE, yeah, the Prime Minister's degree. It's the same course studied by countless British leaders and statesmen.
Exactly. So the critique that often floats around, that he was just a jock or an athlete out of his depth, is frankly intellectually lazy. He had the academic foundation of a statesman long before he ever entered parliament. But of course, the world knows him for cricket. He started internationally in 1971. The text calls him one of the greatest cricketers in Pakistan's history, and specifically notes he was an all-rounder.
Which, for our listeners who might not follow the sport, is a crucial distinction. In cricket, you usually specialize. You're a bowler or you're a batter. Being an all-rounder means he carried the burden of both the offense and the defense. He was the pitcher and the batter, to use a baseball analogy. I don't dispute his sporting greatness. The 1992 World Cup victory is, it's the stuff of legend. Pakistan had never won it. He captained them to that victory. He retired that same year. It's the perfect story. He left as a god.
But he didn't retire to a life of leisure. And this is where that hero arc really solidifies for me. He pivoted to philanthropy. He built the Shaukat Khanum Memorial Cancer Hospital in Lahore, named after his mother who died of the disease. And the key detail here is that it provides free treatment for the poor. In a country without a robust safety net, that is a monumental achievement of logistics and fundraising. It proved he could build an institution from scratch.
It is a remarkable achievement, no question. And if we were eulogizing a philanthropist today, I would have no notes. But he pivoted again. He founded the PTI, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, or Movement for Justice, in 1996. And this is where the data gets messy. You talk about visionary leadership, but the source material notes that for years, his party had, and I quote, limited success. He was in the political wilderness for over 2 decades.
See, you say wilderness, I see grit. Most celebrities who enter politics expect a coronation. They expect their fame to just carry them to office instantly. Khan founded the PTI in 1996 and didn't become prime minister until 2018. That is 22 years of losing, of being dismissed, of grinding away. That is not the behavior of a dilettante. That is the behavior of a true believer. When he finally took office on August 18, 2018, it was a validation of that persistence. And he ran on anti-corruption and social welfare, the exact values he practiced at his hospital.
But winning the election is just the job interview. Governance is the actual job. And this is where the narrative just fractures. The material states explicitly that his term ended in April 2022. He didn't finish his full term. He was removed by a vote of no confidence.
We do need to unpack that, though, because removed sounds so passive.
We do. A vote of no confidence isn't a coup in the violent sense. It's a constitutional mechanism. It means the parliament, the representatives of the people, collectively decided he could no longer lead. It implies a loss of majority support. You can be the most resilient man in the world, but if you cannot hold a coalition together in a parliamentary system, you have failed as a politician. And since then, the text is a litany of legal cases, arrests, and convictions. That is a stark contrast to the glory of 1992.
Okay, let's dig into that contrast, because I think it brings us to the core of the debate, this translation of leadership skills. You seem to suggest that because he lost the confidence of the parliament, he lacked leadership. I argue that the type of leadership that wins a World Cup is exactly what Pakistan needed, even if the system rejected it.
But are they the same skill? That's my whole issue. On a cricket field, the captain is essentially a monarch. He sets the field placements, he tells the bowler when to bowl. If a player disagrees, the captain overrules them. It's autocratic. And Khan was brilliant at that. He could grab a team by the scruff of the neck and force them to win. But a prime minister and a coalition government? You can't just order allies to agree with you. You have to cajole, you have to trade, you have to compromise.
Compromise is often just a euphemism for corruption, though, and that's what he ran against. The text says he focused on anti-corruption policies. So when you take an uncompromising World Cup captain attitude into a corrupt political swamp, of course the swamp fights back. The political challenges and the vote of no confidence, they weren't signs that his leadership style was wrong. They were signs that it was working too well for the comfort of the status quo. He treated the country like a team that needed discipline, and the entrenched interests didn't want to be disciplined.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the failure to govern is actually a secret success. That's a very romantic way to look at it, but let's look at the scoreboard. In cricket, the scoreboard is runs. In politics, the scoreboard is economic health and stability. The source material explicitly mentions that during his tenure he had to handle economic challenges, and it notes that after his removal, the country faced instability. So if his discipline was so effective, why was the economy struggling? Why did he lose the numbers in parliament? You can't eat anti-corruption rhetoric.
But that's unfair because it completely ignores the global context provided in the material. You cannot just gloss over the fact that he was governing during the COVID-19 pandemic. The text says, quote, Pakistan also faced the COVID-19 pandemic during his government. This was a once-in-a-century economic shock. Every leader on earth struggled. The fact that the country didn't collapse entirely is in itself a testament to management.
I grant you the pandemic. It was a massive external factor that would test anyone.
It was the ultimate curveball. And how did he respond? The material says he focused on social welfare programs. This is the continuity I'm talking about. He took the Shaukat Khanum model, empathy, free treatment, caring for the poorest, and tried to scale it up to the state level during a global crisis. That is not a failure of leadership. That is a man prioritizing human life over macroeconomic indicators, exactly as a philanthropist would. He brought the hospital mindset to the prime minister's office.
But a state is not a charity. A charity relies on donors. A state relies on a functioning economy and foreign relations. The text mentions he handled foreign relations, but it doesn't list them as a triumph in the same way it lists the World Cup. My point is that the social work mindset has limits. You can run a hospital on moral purity. You cannot run a nuclear-armed nation of 240 million people on moral purity alone. You need political maneuverability. The fact that he was ousted suggests he was rigid where he needed to be flexible.
Or perhaps he was principled where others would have been flexible. Look, let's look at the post-premiership phase. The text describes a difficult phase marked by legal cases and convictions. You view this as a tarnish. I view it as the price of disruption. In many developing nations, when a true outsider challenges the system, the legal system is weaponized against them. The fact that he is facing jail time suggests he is still a threat to the established order. If he were just some failed, incompetent politician, they would just let him fade away. They are arresting him because he still commands the hero loyalty of 1992.
That's a speculative leap, though. An interesting one. We have to stick to what the text implies. The text connects his removal to political struggles, and then it lists the convictions. It depicts a downward spiral. The hero builds institutions. The politician, it seems, finds himself at war with them. Look at the timeline again. 1996 to 2018 was a struggle to get in. 2018 to 2022 was a struggle to stay in. And 2022 onwards is a struggle to stay out of prison. At what point do we just admit that the transition was a failure?
A failure? Or an unfinished chapter? The source says he is one of the most well-known personalities in the country's history. That fame is a currency he hasn't spent yet.
But fame is not legitimacy, and this is the crux of the hero versus politician debate. The hero is universally loved. When Pakistan won the World Cup, the whole country celebrated. When he built the hospital, everyone applauded. But politics is inherently divisive. By entering the arena, he forced half the country to hate him. He traded universal adoration for partisan warfare.
He traded adoration for impact. That's the difference between a celebrity and a leader. A celebrity hoards popularity. A leader spends it to get things done. He spent his political capital on fighting corruption. Did he run out of capital? Yes. Clearly, the vote of no confidence proves that. But the attempt itself validates the Oxford graduate and the Pashtun warrior description. He didn't take the easy road.
He certainly didn't take the easy road, but we have to ask if he took the effective road. Let's look back at the limited success of the PTI for those first 22 years. You called it resilience. I see it as a signal that, well, the market wasn't buying what he was selling for a very long time. And when they finally bought it in 2018, the buyer's remorse set in within 4 years. The collapse of his government wasn't just a conspiracy, it was a failure to deliver stability.
Stability is often just stagnation in disguise. The material notes he entered politics to fight corruption and improve governance. Real reform creates instability. If you start cleaning a messy house, dust goes everywhere. The instability you cite is the dust. The convictions are the dust. It's proof of the cleaning process.
That is a compelling metaphor, but in the real world, instability hurts the very poor people he claims to help. Inflation, currency devaluation, these are the real costs of political chaos. The philanthropist in him wanted to help the poor. The politician in him may have inadvertently made their lives harder by engaging in a war with the state machinery that he just couldn't win.
And that assumes the war's over. The text says he is facing legal cases, implying the situation is ongoing. The final verdict on his political career? Well, it hasn't been written yet.
Perhaps. But the trend line is, it's concerning. We have moved from world champion to inmate. That is a tragic trajectory, no matter how you spin it.
I'd call it a sacrificial trajectory. He had everything: money, fame, respect. He risked it all.
And that brings us to our closing thoughts. How do we sum up this figure?
To me, the material presents Imran Khan as a man of singular focus. Whether it was perfecting his bowling action, building a cancer hospital, or chasing the prime ministership, he operates with a terrifying intensity. The arc of legacy here is one of escalating stakes. He conquered sport. He conquered philanthropy. He attempted to conquer the state. And the fact that the state pushed back doesn't diminish the man. It clarifies the magnitude of the enemy he chose to fight. He is a transformational figure because he refused to stay in the box the world built for him.
And my conclusion is that the source material serves as a warning about the limits of individual brilliance. Imran Khan proves that you can be an exceptional individual, a great athlete, a compassionate fundraiser, and still founder when faced with the collective complexity of politics. The skills did not translate. The autocratic captain could not become the consensus builder. His legacy will likely be a duality, the undeniable hero of 1992 and the contentious, convicted politician of 2024. He proved that winning a World Cup is hard, but governing a nation is infinitely harder.
And it is a story that really forces us to ask, do we want our leaders to be